Hello, everybody. This is Yvonne Desai with Decode Vitality. I have two awesome women with me today. There's Kayla and Kristen Joy, and they are enlisted educators. What does that mean? That means that they have gone through a certification process, learning how language can impact our lives, our health, our outcomes, and how it impacts children. And so, thank you for joining me today, ladies.
Thanks, Yvonne.
So, starting out, I know, Kayla, that you've been incorporating this in because you're a teacher and you've been incorporating this in the education with your kids and stuff. What impact and what have you seen thus far with utilizing these tools and what you learned in the Enlifted coaching and impacting that in education?
Well, I would say the most important thing that I've learned and realized is how important it is for me to continue to work on myself, and writing down my affirmations every single morning. How do I want to show up at school with my students? What type of teacher do I want to be? What type of disposition do I want to bring to the students? Has been very important for me. And that also has touched on and highlighted something that Kristen talks a lot about, which is being comfortable repeating yourself multiple times and in a kind tone. Sometimes when we repeat ourselves, it can be easy to develop an attitude, or sometimes people say things underneath of their breath when they have to repeat themselves. And one thing that I've noticed in the last 2 months, I would say, is how much more comfortable I am repeating myself multiple times and the impact that has in how the students react to me. And I know
Awesome.
Kristen can talk about that more too from her own experience in the youngins.
Yeah, and I also want to add that Kristen Joy has started a book for children on language as well, which I just wanted to throw that out there. And we want to make this about how we can connect more with our children during this time with the break, the holiday break and things, and how, incorporating these things with your own children during the holidays. So go ahead, Kristen. What would you like to add?
Yeah. Well, with that, the book and the language, the repeating, both the book focuses on how we use our words. Our words have a power; they're magical. Abracadabra, we like to say. And with that power, we get to decide. Like you can have the worst day ever, or you can have a bad moment. You get to choose based off of what you're saying. So using that power, teaching the kids about the power of their language first helps give them their own power, because they're now able to realize, oh, this wasn't the worst day ever. I had a bad moment, and there's been a lot of good things that happen. Um, and then, yeah, with that as well, having that those words in hand as parents, being able and willing to repeat yourself, or as teachers, I should too. One of the best stories I ever was told was when I had a student that had ADHD and autism, and he would run around the room like crazy. And his aide told me, imagine you're in driver's training. You've got all these stimulants around you. You're learning how to drive for the first time. And your driver's instructor says, do not turn left. Like, what do you think you're going to do? And I
Yeah,
looked at her and I'm like, oh, I'd turn left. I'm not going to go right.
that's a
So,
great analogy. Yeah.
so with that, like being able to tell the kids what you want them to do, and staying calm and being willing to repeat what you want is very effective.
Yeah, I bet. I know. It reminds me of in the documentary The Cosmic Giggle that Mark was in, and he talks about, you know, talking to your child and telling him like, don't be late for school. Well, what happens is you put that mental image in the child's mind of being late for school, and then when they're running late, then you irritate yourself, and then you emotionally dump all over the child. So monitoring and understanding and really being conscious of our language and the words we use can not only have an impact on us, it's also obviously going to have an impact on our children. And using the right language can literally not only de-stress, de-escalate situations as well. So yeah, I love that analogy. That's so true. And you know, being conscious of how we're talking to our children. And like Kayla was bringing up, I love about the tone, the attitude we have, you know, and yes, it might seem to be irritating to have to repeat ourselves as parents. And that's how we even learn as adults, is the repetition, right?
Well, and I think touching on that too, Yvonne, I know one of my students this week, we were playing a game in order to study for a quiz the kids had coming up this week. And one girl, after the game got over, she came up to me and she said, my team was on fire. Every single team I was on, we won. And I looked at her and I said, was your teams on fire or were you on fire? And she's like, oh, I was on fire. And I was like, yeah, you were, you know, and turning that around and allowing her to see, you know, at first she said it was everyone else's reason why they did well. And it could potentially be, it could have been definitely a group effort. However, owning the role that she played in her group changed her opinion, and she completely lit up. And when she took the quiz, she came up to me again afterwards. She's like, that quiz was so easy. I did so well on that. And I said, I know you did. Of course, like, of course you did. You know, that language that we use when you know, of course, of course. So to me, it's so important to remind the kids and to give themselves credit for what they've done.
Yes.
Because too often, like Kristen was mentioning, you were mentioning too, like people will focus on what everyone else has done rather than focus on how they've done something themselves. Or they'll notice the bad stuff rather than noticing the good that's right there in front of them. And to me, it's very important to remind students of that. And, you know, you do that through your questioning, and you do that by redirecting the students to focus on that. And that's why it's so important for me every single day to be in my right space, in my right mind, because then I'm able to do that for the kids. You know, if I'm, you know, confused or frustrated, and I have that million things going through my mind, like Kristen was alluding to, well, then it's going to be much more difficult for me to hear what the kids are saying, to be an active listener, and then to respond appropriately to them. So it all really ties together. It fits so nicely together once you practice it several times, and you're willing to practice it and go through the stages and ask the curious questions.
I love that, because it's so absolutely true, you know, and to really build their confidence in themselves, especially at these stages, you know, that it seems to be a lot of kids that are angry or frustrated or what have you. It's typically, you know, how they're being talked to, or how they're being taught, you know, unintentionally. I'm not, obviously nobody's intentionally trying to do these things to their children. It's just things that as parents, I love what you said, because as parents, taking time for themselves and really setting the intention and the focus and the their mood for that day can set the tone for the whole rest of the day and for their child's day, and then teaching them as well to do that for themselves. But like you said, that I can see where that really could help those kids' confidence and really believing in themselves, to where as they get older, then they feel like they can do whatever they choose.
which they can.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Kristen?
With that as well, what came to mind for me was feeling that emotion, also being allowed to dig into what is coming up in that emotion. I have a student right now that he really wants everything to be perfect. And if it's not perfect right away, he's giving up and storming off. And I could follow him and try to talk him through everything. I've chosen instead to let him go feel his feelings. And when he's ready, come back and try again. And the more often I allow him to feel his feelings and come back, the sooner he's coming back. And the more willing he is to try again. So sometimes we have to say, okay, today this isn't what we're doing. And he'll be willing to come back to it though later because he was given the opportunity to express what he was feeling, feel through it, and then come back as well. So with giving that freedom to explore why they're feeling something, and that comes with the question. You can also ask the questions though too, like letting them feel and then asking what's coming up for you. What Instead of trying to tell them what they're feeling or how they can fix it, ask those curious questions. What are you feeling? How are you feeling in your body? Where's your breath right now? How are you breathing? Do you feel anything in particular anywhere? So getting in touch with how those feelings are coming up too is very important.
I love that, because that I realized even for me, and not that long ago, as I've been going through my own stuff, with as an adult, with not, we tend to, as a culture, as I want to say globally, told to suppress our emotions, or told to, but we essentially, it's like, oh, you're fine, or oh, it's okay, or that's, don't worry about it, and just kind of stuff it and move on. Whereas what I found for me in my own experience is allowing myself to feel through what happened and process that. By doing that with them, and like you said, asking the right questions, it's like then they can really begin to understand themselves, and then we as parents can understand our children and where they're coming from, because us imposing our will on them isn't going to help them any. It's going to stifle them, if anything. And I feel like for parents, doing things this way is going to help their children's energy not be so heightened and hyperactive, because they're able to get those feelings out and then come back to that place of feeling calm and okay, because they got to get that out and not stuffing it continuously. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it makes me think of sometimes, I imagine when kids get home from school, they may tell their parents a story about what happened. And the parent's emotion will come out in their questions or in their responses. If a child tells their parent about something that, let's say, Bobby did to them at school. Well, why would Bobby do that to you, right? Like the parent reacts and they're upset or they're angry. Well, then the child takes that on and thinks, well, then they take on the parent's emotions rather than recognizing what their own emotions is. Whereas a more beneficial question could be the child telling the story about what Bobby did at school, and the parent says, well, how did that make you feel? What did you do because of that? What can you do because of that? And ask those types of questions. And then the child is able to process through their emotions, as what Kristen's doing with the student that she's working with, as opposed to Kristen going and saying, oh, you don't need to be upset, it's okay, trying to give her feelings to the situation. That causes more problems. That's where we learn not to feel our feelings through. And that's also where we begin to mislabel our emotions too. We mislabel them with someone else labeling them for us, and then we take them on it ourselves, and then we're unable to work through them because they're not ours to begin with to work through.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Absolutely. It's so I'm so glad you guys are doing this and working with kids, because it also is an education for the parents, in taking the time, because obviously parents are going through stuff, working and taking care of kids, taking care of a household. Totally understand that the parents have a lot on their plate. However, this is a human being that you would like to add and contribute and be a great part of society and in the future, right? And so it really starts with our children, and it starts at home, even though you guys as educators obviously are doing your best and doing your part to assist in that. At home, keeping these things in mind, and really giving yourselves breaks as parents too, is so much pressure. And when we tend to, like I talked about this with Ryan yesterday, and getting reactive, everything seems to be this reactive state because of that stress. So taking time to, with the parents, them taking time for themselves and really like setting the tone like we discussed earlier, and then that way, and then teaching that to the kids and even doing it together, so that we can start to be more examples of how we can contribute to their health and well-being, because this is going to impact everything in this sets the tone for their whole life and future, when you really think about it. So yeah, that's amazing. What suggestions would you guys give to parents as far as, with what you guys are doing with them in school or in their education, and then also what at home, like you had mentioned and touched on, Kayla, some things that you could do with, instead of reacting and telling them and allowing them to feel their own feelings and coming into themselves. What do you, any suggestions, Kristen, or either of you, that you have on stuff that parents can do at home to assist in this?
I think one big thing to start off with is making sure, being aware of where you're breathing, and making sure when you're responding to your kids that it's coming from a calm place instead of a heightened place of stress. How many times have, like, as me, with me as a teacher, especially a young teacher, I would get frustrated and I'd be like, you guys need to stop doing this, and I'm tense and I'm breathing up in my chest. And when I'm able, making sure I'm calm, I'm breathing low into my belly, and I say instead what I would like them to be doing, like, I would like you to sit right now, we're reading a book, we're going to listen, and being, again, willing to repeat the directions as needed too. um, that changes everything. Like, I went from having behavior issues in my classroom all the time to being able to have fun with the kids, because I was calm and my calmness helped them. And
Thank you.
we as adults are modeling what we want to see in them.
Thank you. Absolutely. That it's, I think, not to compare children to animals, but I've trained dogs and horses and things like that. And a lot of times they respond to our state of being, our energy. And so I imagine it's a lot the same with children as well, that typically they are mirror images of they look to us as examples. So how they're behaving could be a reflection of how, the state that the parents may be in of stress at home. And so being mindful of that, if their children misbehaving, why? There's really always the question as to why something is happening. That's what I've been doing for 44 years, is why something is happening. Because it's not that kids just innately are misbehaving or acting a certain way for no reason. There's a reason behind it. And by taking the time as a parent to breathe, get in that calmer state, and like you both have addressed, asking the right questions. what questions would you guys recommend for parents that they could ask their children in a way that to draw out how they're feeling? Have you guys, in your experience with kids yourself, like what questions do you typically ask them, and exercises that you have them do, writing or just speaking? Just what all do you guys do in regards to asking good questions that helps get what's on their mind?
One thing that when a student comes up to me and they may be upset about something, I'll ask them, tell me more about that. Tell me more. And I allow them to elaborate, because a lot of times people, they're so used to being cut off, right? Like sometimes we get cut off in conversations, or people will interject when you start. And a lot of times kids really want to share whatever it may be. They really are interested in sharing. And when they know that someone is actively listening to them, right? Their body is directed towards them. They're making eye contact. They're not turned or disengaged. They really do thrive on that. And that's the first step, is to be an active listener when a child is sharing, because that in and of itself will eliminate so many of the potential behavior problems, because the child's needs are being satisfied by being acknowledged.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that, because what do we do as adults? I mean, my goodness, for me anyway, going through this coaching myself, it was a lot of those emotions that I didn't get to express as a child that was coming out, those feelings that I buried because I was shut down, because I wasn't allowed to express myself as a child. And so as an adult, how that impacted me, I can't even share how much that impacted me. There are no words for how much that impacted me. And then being able to release the feeling that I wasn't allowed to express as a child. So allowing them to do that now is going to help them have a more balanced energy. And what happens as children, for me, in my own experience as a child, having that stuffed and buried and what have you, then what happens? We tend to take it out in other ways. We get frustrated because we're not allowed to express ourselves as children. So then it could turn into anything, an emotionally reactive, frustrated, quiet, withdrawn, or a bully, whatever it is, it's from not getting to express those emotions when we're children. So that's a great point. What
Yeah,
about
and
you, Kristen? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Kayla.
I was just going to say one other thing is, and then asking them, like, what do you need right now then, right? Like, they know themselves better than you, even the parents. So what do you need right now? Do you need to go sit quietly and read your book? Do you need to go and play with a favorite toy? Do you need to take an early bath or a shower? Like, do you need to go and play with a friend? Do you need a hug? Like asking the child what they need in that situation, whatever it may be, and positioning the child as their own authority figure. And that I think is very important to also include.
Absolutely. What about you, Kristen? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, same as Kayla. Yeah, getting to give them that power of saying this is how I feel and asking the questions are very, very important. And then to go off as well, part of what Kayla was saying as well is getting engaged with the child with asking these questions. So with your kids, when you start asking these questions, there's also a chance that there's been some built up resistance. Well, before I wanted to tell you how I felt and I didn't have an option. So there may not initially be a reaction of, I'm going to share openly with you. And so one thing that you could do, like Kayla was saying, look at them, fully engage when talking with them. And depending on the age they're at as well, I would even recommend ask to be invited into what they're doing. Like if they're younger kids and they're playing, get down on their level and ask to be invited in to join in their play. For teenagers, they could be, if they're playing a video game or have a book that they enjoy or something, ask to be invited into a conversation about what it is that's interesting them, and spend
Yeah.
I'd recommend starting small, like expect maybe 5 minutes of time where for both like your kids and you, small amounts of time to start. And then as everybody gets more engaged, it'll become easier and be more of a common thing where that will flow. And to start, I recommend being asked to invite me in. Let me come join you on your level.
Love it. Love it. Thank you guys. This is amazing. I would like to have each of you share what you're doing, the coaching that you do, so that any parent out there interested in being coached or having you coach their children, then they'll know how to contact you. And I'll also post your information in the post so that they can look you up that way. This is amazing. This holiday season, during this break, this is a great opportunity to practice and apply these things with your children and really help both of you out, because not only will your child be calmer and happier, it'll make your life easier. They'll likely listen to you better. And so then you won't have as much stress as well as a parent. So this is awesome, you guys. Great information. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing. And yes, so please state what each of you is doing. So Kayla and then Kristen, if you would share what you have and what you're doing, and then also like I said, I'll post links.
Perfect. Thanks, Yvonne. So I do coaching with children and adults, and I primarily focus on middle school children and up. That is the area that I have the most experience. So I do individual coaching sessions with both children and adults. You can find me at Our Stories in Motion on Facebook and Instagram. You can also email me at storiesinmotionllc@gmail.com.
And I am doing a group program for the core language upgrade, which is around what we are talking about today, like the power of our language and how that in fact affects us. So starting my next round in January 3rd. Lost my train of thought. Anyhow, it's a group program where we go over the 3-week long. We're going over the power of our language. I am focused on parents. I want to give parents the power of the language so that we can really work with the kids and do more of what we were talking about today. So my focus is the group coaching, and I am open for individual one-on-one coaching or family coaching as well. You can find me on Instagram at stories_Kristen Joy and Facebook Kristen Joy Davis, or email davis.kristenj@gmail.com.
Awesome. And like I said, I'll post their contact info, emails, links, and all that in the post. And thank you so much, you guys. This was really amazing stuff, very powerful. And thank you. Look forward to working with you guys some more in the future. Have an awesome rest of your weekend. Happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.